Welcome to Decision Vision, a podcast series focusing on critical business decisions. Brought to you by Brady Ware & Company. Brady Ware is a regional, full-service accounting and advisory firm that helps businesses and entrepreneurs make visions a reality.
And welcome to Decision Vision, a podcast giving you, the listener, clear vision to make great decisions. In each episode, we discuss the process of decision-making on a different topic from the business owner's or executive's perspective. We aren't necessarily telling you what to do, but we can put you in a position to make an informed decision on your own and understand when you might need help along the way. My name is Mike Blake, and I'm your host for today's program. I'm a director at Brady Ware & Company, a full-service accounting firm based in Dayton, Ohio, with offices in Dayton, Columbus, Ohio, Richmond, Indiana, and Alpharetta, Georgia. Brady Ware is sponsoring this podcast, which is being recorded in Atlanta per social distancing protocols. If you like this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast aggregator, and please consider leaving a review of the podcast as well. So today's topic is, should my next job be my own business? And, I think this is, as we record this now on September 18th, which means it's probably going to come out in probably the middle or second half of October. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the world will not have changed terribly much in the intervening time. I think a lot of people are being faced with this decision. Not to be a doomsayer or a Debbie Downer or whatnot, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of jobs that have been lost are not coming back very quickly. Some of them may not be at all, and some of us have the savings and wealth that we can kind of hold out for the market to come back around, and frankly, if statistics are to be believed, a lot of us don't have that kind of financial cushion. And a choice I think that many people are likely thinking about is, can I take my considerable talents into the entrepreneurial sector? And I think that America, like everybody else, like all other countries, is far from a perfect place. But one thing that is easy to do here is to start and launch your own business. I think in a lot of ways, it's never been easier to do that, at least from a mechanical perspective. But that's not an easy decision. We make it look easy. We glorify the entrepreneur in American society. In fact, I would argue that one of the things that makes America unique is that we are the one society of which I'm aware that positions the entrepreneur as a folk hero. And I don't know of any place in the world that quite does that. And really to the point where, you almost feel, if you're not quote entrepreneur, you feel like, well, something wrong with me. And that's not the case. In fact, if the whole world were entrepreneurs, we'd never get anything done. We'd never aggregate talent and capital because nobody would take direction from anybody else. Given kind of the environment, where, now we're applauding the fact that there are 850,000 new unemployment claims in a given week. That's still a staggering number. It's just not as staggering as 2 million, which is where we were a few weeks ago. And so I think this topic of helping you walk through and really walk in the shoes of somebody who's really been through it, maybe not quite under the same circumstances, but I think you'll agree that it really does get you to the same place, I think is going to be a very instructive journey that I think you can learn some lessons of what to do. And I have a feeling there'll be a sentence or two about what not to do as well. So, buckle up. And I think this is going to be a really good show. And joining us today is my dear friend, Stacy Reece. And we have been arguing for the last 10 minutes of when we last saw each other. I think we've settled in that probably sometime before the last total solar eclipse is when it was. But she's CEO of House and Home, whose motto is Southern women don't have attitudes, we have standards. Down South House and Home offers high-quality Southern-themed home goods with clean, classic designs. Down South House and Home is for Southern women who wanted to grow up and be Atticus Finch. They're for Southern women who would fight to the death for their grandmother's cast iron collection. They're for Southern women who value equality, literacy, and hospitality. They're for Southern women who know how to act in a cow pasture or a country club. They're for Southern women with resolute characters and gracious disposition. They're for Southern women who hoard bacon fat. They make things in a tiny red barn in Clarkston, Georgia. They don't pretend that they live in a perfect camera-ready house, and they don't expect that you do either. But if your home is like theirs, there's a lot of laughter, love, and piles of precious memories in every corner. The way they see it, if your home has that, then it's beautiful. Stacy has a long and varied career, including as a scientific advisor, a patent analyst, a facilitator of biotechnology business in Georgia and the Southeast. She is a daughter of the American Revolution and holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Georgia and a PhD in organic chemistry from Carnegie Mellon University. So as an aside, organic chemistry is basically the class that convinces people who think they want to be doctors not to be doctors. That's the class that washes people out in pre-med and medical school more often than not. So she got a PhD in it. In other words, this lady is really smart, and she's awesome, and she is Stacy Reece. Thank you for coming on the program.
Hey, Michael Blake. It's so good to see you again and hear your voice.
Well, thank you. It's great. It's great to see you again as well. If you ever need a fix, there are 82 podcasts of this stuff before us. So, just feel free to turn that on in the background when you're fighting for somebody's cast iron pan. So, your story, I think, is so fascinating, as I said in the introduction, because I think a lot of people are finding themselves in a decision and the decision, frankly, really is there another job out for me, right? The music has stopped. There are a lot fewer chairs and there are people kind of dancing around them. Is there a job for me? And do I need to think about creating my own job? And so I think your origin story for Down South House and Home is very instructive in this regard. So can you talk a little bit about what you were doing before you started Down South House and Home?
Well, it's a long and torrid story. I was working for the state of Georgia as a facilitator of innovation. And I had a pretty good big budget. It was about $270,000. And basically an old white man came and tried to raid my budget, and I stood up to him, and he used his power to get me derail my career. And the science community in Georgia is pretty small, and there wasn't a whole lot of employment for me after that happened. So I started with an information security startup after that. And, you and I are both terminal entrepreneurs. We just can't help it, and probably our personalities contribute to that as well. And so, I started with this information security startup, and this is before the Sony hack, when that really bad movie got hacked by South Korea at Sony, and people, were all of a sudden, interested in information security. And so this was before that. And this company had like this really awesome, solid encryption program that could move large amounts of data very quickly, end-to-end encryption. And, so I didn't know anything about encryption at the time, but I went with them figuring, hey, how can encryption be so hard? I'll figure it out. Right. So I started like going on Coursera and Udemy classes, and encryption's really hard. And this information security company had a great technology, and they were able to pay me for about the first 4 months. And then they kind of ran out of money, but the money was coming, and I really did believe that the money was coming, and so did they. But there were some Saudis involved and a crazy Finnish encryption specialist. So with that mixture, it blew up. But I stayed with the company without getting paid for about a year and a half after I quit getting paid, because I believed in the technology. I understood about encryption finally to understand how good it was. But this is before the Sony hack, and nobody really cared because they were using secure socket layer and they thought that was fine. And it has not been fine for 10 years, but we still continue to use it. But anyway, I finally had to decide that was not going to go anywhere. And so I left the company and, tried to find another job. And, being a woman of a certain age and in a male-dominated field, it's very, very hard to get an interview. And if you do get an interview, it's very hard to get a job. And my husband had started an online publication. And so he was rather entrepreneurial himself. And, and I said, I've just got to find something. And so I took this really, really, really bad job working for a couple of artists who did high quality screen printed poster art. And it was a terrible job. The building was full of black mold. I don't know why they had thousands of dollars of worth of paper goods in a building with black mold, but they did. But they also had these little dish towels that they were selling. They were selling for like $28, and nobody buys a dish towel for $28, but they were really beautiful. And I was trying to get them to, we should focus on that some more because, my husband's company can sell more of them. And, and finally we had an agreement that I was not a good fit for their company. And that was fine because I was tired of the black mold filling my lungs. But, but, I was
just have such a prima donna.
I was using my $15 an hour pay for to buy all the allergy medication, and so my husband's company at the time was having some real financial problems, and I was like, we need to make our own stuff, and we had through our dual entrepreneurial life. We moved from less and less expensive housing over the course of 2 or 3 years, and we wound up out in Clarkston, Georgia, which is right outside of the perimeter of Atlanta, and it's a very charming place. And we moved into this little 1939 cottage with a 2-story barn in the backyard. And the person who put the barn in the backyard was used to work for the Center for Puppetry Arts. And so it was all tricked out with all the great, all the right electrical wiring and things like that. And one of the things I learned in the black mold place was there was a screen printer right next door. And I got to actually see the screen printing process and got to meet the guy who did the screen printing process. And he was a master at screen printing. But I started to realize, what, I could screen print. It's not that hard. I have a PhD in chemistry. How hard can it be? Right. So I took a little class in screen printing, and this 2-story barn was doing nothing but holding all my China patterns because I have about 3 or 4. And, so there's a 2-story barn in the backyard doing nothing but hold storage. And I said, I can put a screen printing shop in there. And so I took a class, and then I bought like a $2,500 kit of, a screen printing press and inks and all the stuff you have to do to make the screens, and started making towels. And that was it. And so that was something that my husband's company could sell to generate revenues. And that's kind of the long and winding way that I got to this place.
So, it doesn't sound like you were necessarily thinking about this while you were employed, right? The way you tell the story, and correct me if that's wrong, please, is that, one day you kind of had a job, and the next day you were in business.
Yeah.
Or something close to it. Is that accurate, or was there a transition? Was there a planning phase?
It was a long period of unemployment, and it was like, I've been a serial. I've been an entrepreneurism junkie since graduate school, and I've always thought, I was like you were mentioning before in the intro. It's like well, if you're not really an entrepreneur, then you just don't have any guts. It's like you just have a day job, then you're kind of wussing out, and that's not necessarily true. And actually, it is very nice to have a steady income, and I highly recommend it. Not having had one for long periods of time, and so, but that was sort of the way that I thought. I've either been an entrepreneur or I've been doing something to assist entrepreneurs, and so I just I finally realized that I've got to be an entrepreneur, because nobody's going to hire a woman over 50 in a male-dominated field, and if I don't make it myself, I'm just going to have, I'm just going to have to go work in a library or, a craft store, if I don't make my own business. And,
and I want to pause on that for a second, because I do think that's really important. It's, it's unfortunate that there is age discrimination. And, I recently flipped the switch and made my 50th year around this. And, I kind of think about, what would I be doing if I weren't still where I am? I'm a quasi-entrepreneur. I'm a part owner in my business. I'm responsible for my own P&L, but it's different. But, if as a man, even at the age that I'm at, the likelihood that I'm going to land a job is quite low. Right. And I probably would have to start something on my own. So I think that's important for a listener to think about is, are you in a field or a scenario where age discrimination can be very real? And look, we're setting the line arbitrarily at 50. If you're out in Silicon Valley, it's 35. I read all kinds of stories about, men are getting plastic surgery now and doing all kinds of things to keep themselves looking younger. And people are now hiding age from their resumes and their LinkedIn profile. That age discrimination is real. And, you may want to just sort of take stock of that and recognize, hey, maybe I won't be the target of age discrimination, but I probably will. And that might go into the calculus. At least if you start your own business, you're not going to discriminate against yourself.
Exactly.
And, it's funny. People are happy, even if you don't do what you've done, which is, you're in the product business, and we'll get to that. Even if you're in services like me, somebody who would never hire somebody like me to be their CFO would happily hire somebody like me to be their outsourced contract CFO. Yep. Right? It's purely a psychological thing. But anyway, so one question I want to kind of drill down, because I think every entrepreneur goes through this. I have for sure when I've had my own business, and even sometimes with my own practice. How did you keep from freaking out? I mean, you've gone through long periods without an income because you made some bets that haven't panned out. And that's entrepreneurship. How do you keep from freaking out? Or maybe I'm even assuming something. Did you keep from freaking out? Maybe the answer is, how did you recover from freaking out?
Well, I became a good and proper alcoholic, Mike.
Okay.
And, and I think it started like when the information security company started, like it wasn't going to get some money, Yeah. And, I mean, it's not like it popped up like a mushroom overnight. I'd been practicing for years, but,
role of a lifetime.
It takes commitment. And, and I used alcohol to cover up my insecurities. I mean, I'd work all day at something, but, at 5 o'clock, the stress of it all, the worry, I soothed that with a couple of martinis and then more than that. A lot more than that. And I got sober about 3 years ago, and that was when my company started doing a lot better. And oddly enough, when you're not hungover, you can focus on things. And, it's one of the things I've realized more and more as I've, gotten better at being sober and living with myself without the comfort of alcohol, my beliefs limit me. And the more that I can identify the negative beliefs about myself and my value and my worth, the better I am at my company. And, and I'm not saying that as like, it's all my fault, but it is all my responsibility and it's all my choice. And, and I can choose to look at the negative, the negative sides of myself and question whether or not they're actually valuable beliefs. Or I can just keep floundering away with all of my negative beliefs, and it's like, I have to choose to confront them. And the more that I confront them, the better I am at my business.
Well, first, congratulations. I'm glad that you're healthy and you're in a healthier lifestyle and a healthier place. And thank you for sharing that with our audience. I'm not sure that in fact, I'm quite confident most of our guests probably would not, but I think that's I think that's a real thing. I think that struggle, and I'll cop to this. I mean, when being an entrepreneur is a really lonely place.
Yep.
And the reason I think the reason it's so lonely is because really everything is your fault, or at least everything appears to be proximately your fault, right? I mean, yeah, things just sort of don't go your way. You can't realistically predict that, we're going to get hit by a pandemic and then massive social upheaval and then murder hornets and, everything else, right? But the fact of the matter is that being an entrepreneur is not that different than doing a nude scene in a worldwide film release. I mean, it's all out there. There's no hiding from yourself. And it's all, literally it's self-exposure, but it's exposure of the mind and the psyche, not the body.
Yeah. 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 Because you don't really have anyone else to blame.
No, you don't.
And, but I think blaming yourself is not the way to go, because I've tried that for a long time and it's not very successful. There are tools and resources that you can go to help. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a psychologist. It doesn't have to be AA, but there are, coaching options for, helping you, look at your limiting beliefs. And, I have been surprised at all the limiting beliefs that I carry. And, and those were the things that I used to drink over. And, so it's, like I would say, if you are in the throes of, starting your own company, or you're in the desperate place of having to start your own company, have a little grace with yourself and seek out tools and communities that can help you confront your negative beliefs, so that you can turn them into beliefs that are more empowering. Because, going into an entrepreneurship believing that you're going to be a failure is pretty much a good prescription for failure. And, and so it is very lonely. And, you and I, Michael, are introverts, and I consider socialization as, having a conversation with the checkout guy at the Home Depot Garden Center. I'm good for a week, and that's pretty much all I need. But, there are other people who are extroverts. And if you're an extrovert and you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to figure out, like, how are you going to get your people time, and how do you make that productive? And because you can get very lonely. And if you have any negative beliefs about yourself, they will ricochet around your brain all day long until you realize that they're not actually true.
Yeah. And I think those beliefs are natural. It's the unusual person. And I would even argue somewhat psychopathic person that truly doesn't have any self-doubt, that truly believes, you know what, it's under my control. I'm just going to do everything and it's all going to turn out great. it's natural for fear and doubt, and but courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. The absence of fear is being a psychopath. And that's generally a very harmful individual. But the ability to address and confront, manage that fear and direct it into something that is constructive, that to me is the definition of courage. So I think a very important lesson we're already getting from this podcast and this interview is that, if you're thinking about starting that business or you already have, and you're wondering if you really have it in you just because you have self-doubt, you have imposter syndrome, or you tend to spiral and you have anxiety and you're wondering where that next paycheck's going to come from. Those are actually healthy, motivational, and for all the people out there who are your competitors and you see on social media and everything is just perfect. I'm here to tell you it ain't. But people have now become very good self-marketers on social media.
Well, and that was one of the things, because, I spent a lot of time thinking all these other people don't have problems because I'm just, riddled with all these imperfections. And I was spending all this time trying to make sure that nobody saw them, because if they saw them, then they would think less of me, think I would have less value. And the older that I get and the more sober that I get, I realize that lots and lots and lots and lots of people have those same self-doubts. Some of them, don't really have to confront them, because their lives are okay. But, when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, it's all right there in your face because you, like we said, don't have anyone else to blame. That I try to incorporate some of that into my brand because, I get so tired of looking at these Instagram kitchens that are all perfect,
it drives you crazy.
Oh, it drives me up the wall.
It's insufferable.
And it's debilitating to compare yourself to that. Yep. And so when I was first starting out, my big problem is I don't have problem working. I can work all day. I can do manual labor. Actually, I prefer manual labor. I have a complete collection of power tools and a pressure washer. And, if you need to know how to use anything, come on over. I'll show you how to do it.
I do, because I'm a danger to myself and others with those things.
Exactly.
So I'll come out there.
Exactly. So, it's I'm not afraid of work, but, it's the creative artistic side that I need for the company, not so much, and so my photography was just awful. And so I was comparing my photography to these perfect Instagram kitchens, not realizing they were using a Photoshop filter to make it all look light and airy. Nobody's kitchen looks like that. Nobody's photography looks that, you have to manipulate those pictures to make it look that bright and fresh. And, and it kind of dawned on me that, so many brands are focused on the perfection, and, Southern Living, Garden and Gun, all these magazines, everything's perfect. And I wanted a brand that had a little wiggle room, and had, I want to make things for Southern women who have a skillet full of bacon grease sitting on the top of their stove because they just finished cooking something yesterday and they haven't had a chance to clean out the skillet because you can't throw your iron skillet in the dishwasher. And, it's I want to have a brand that has some imperfections in it and, cracks, the wabi sabi, it's the thing is more beautiful because it's been repaired. And I have tried to incorporate a lot of that in my brand because I find the more I start to recognize my own self-doubt and my self-limiting beliefs, I realize more people have them. And I realize how damaging those perfect Instagram posts really are when you compare that picture to the reality of your life. But the reality of your life is the messy, hurly-burliness of your house. It's like that because you're living your life and it's a life full of love, hopefully. And, it's, you're busy spending time with people you love than, scrubbing the kitchen. And, so that's, I do try to incorporate that in my brand so that people don't feel like, they don't feel diminished when they come and look at my products.
And what a freeing thing it is to at least at some point not give an F, right? Because the effort in life that is required to go from 85 to 90% good to 100% perfection is so much effort to go from that, between that point A and point B, that it can break you. The nickname for our house that I've given it, and I'm gonna give our listeners a little bit of inside baseball, the life of Mike Blake here, is that we call it barely legal. and the reason we call it that is not for the reason that some people are going to think that we call it that, but we call it that because that's the amount of yard work that we do. We do the minimum amount of yard work to prevent us from getting a ticket from the police and having our neighbors show up to our house with torches and pitchforks, basically, and not be sued for being the eyesore that lowers the value of somebody's house. Because I hate it and I detest it. Yep. And the only reason we own a house is because I need a house to keep all the crap that I own. Well, not crap, my collections that are near and dear to me, but I could not fit them in an apartment. But unfortunately, they do not make many, 3,000 square foot apartments. So here I am. But for a while, it just crazy. And then why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Well, and it was making my work suffer. It was messing with my psyche. And finally I said, and I'm going to keep it barely legal. If that's not good enough, we're going to rip the whole damn thing up and put it in AstroTurf. Which I have researched, but anyway. So we'll keep going on this. I think the mental game of entrepreneurship is so important. It's one that I still think about because I think so much of this is a mental game. Once you realize, so you talked about your insecurities. You talked about kind of one coping mechanism that you learned was not a very effective coping mechanism.
Yeah. So
once you kind of emerged from that, or started to emerge from that, I know it's a constant struggle, not a cure. But did you start to then turn to any external expertise? Did you have advisors? Do you read books, or do you listen to any podcasts other than this one? How do you?
One podcast I find really helpful is a woman named Dr. Shannon Irving, and she has a background in neuroscience, and I don't know if probably a lot of your listeners at some point in their lives have listened to like a Tony Robbins or a Bob Proctor or Think and Grow Rich, that sort of thing, which I've dabbled in, in The Secret, that was a big hit for a while.
The 4-hour work week.
But it's like, if you visualize it, it will, the universe will send it to you, which doesn't work, by the way.
Wish it, want it, have it. Yeah.
and what I like, because a lot of that, seems a little too woo-woo, the universe is going to organize itself and rain down success on you, which is interesting. You think, well, gosh, I got to find out about this, but it does. There is actually a neuroscience foundation in a lot of that. It's just not ever presented in a neuroscience sort of way. And Shannon Irving breaks down a lot of this, the neuroscience that, your reticular activating system in the base of your brain is the sort of the pathway between your subconscious and your conscious. And if you can start creating messages for your reticular activating system to, start communicating back and forth between your conscious and subconscious, that's where you start changing or confronting beliefs. And I've found that really effective. And I just, that has been the most effective thing I've found in confronting the negative beliefs, because your negative beliefs are so automatic. They come from your childhood. They are not your fault most of the time. They got imprinted into your brain when you were a small child and you couldn't tell any difference. And so like I from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I find like that perspective of the neuroscience of how the brain works and how the negative beliefs affect your ability to succeed, and how do you change your negative beliefs. That has been the most freeing thing for me. It's like you can listen to, like listening to a lot of business podcasts is like watching the Instagram profiles of all the homemaking, of all the, home goods, not home goods, but like,
oh, it's so tedious.
It's like everybody's an expert. Nobody ever had any fumbles, so, I mean, sometimes I find a lot of business podcasts to be just as demoralizing as watching the Instagram profiles of all these influencers. And I can't do it. And because I have a science background, I like things that can help solve my problem from a scientific perspective, which is why The Secret and Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins never really did it for me. But like when you break it down to like actual neurons, I'm golden. I'm ready to listen, and it actually does help.
It's interesting. It's interesting about those podcasts. There are a couple that I listen to selectively, but you're right. A lot of them are basically the interview goes something like this. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. How awesome is it to be successful? It's really awesome, Jim. Thanks for asking. How are you? And it's really sort of 45 minutes of sort of that back and forth. It's like, what the most awesome thing is about being awesome? It's the being awesome part, right? And that's, where's the learning? And, I will say this, one of my favorite shows we've done on this show was talking with Milas King and about shutting down a business. What is that process like? How do you get through that kind of thing emotionally? Because like Bill Gates said, success is a lousy teacher, right? And
right.
and learn the failures. The failures are really where the action is in terms of the learning. But of course, it's hard to get people to come on and talk about their failures because that's how we are.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. Now thinking back to this particular business, in retrospect, we've talked about the emotional aspect. What are the other one or two hardest things that you had to do to get this business going and off the ground?
Learning, marketing and self-promotion are really hard for me. And I can go and tout somebody else's, achievements all day long, but I really have a hard time saying, "Hey, look how great I am," or look how great this is. And
you don't even let people know you're alive. I had to find you through the witness protection program.
I know, and that is a shortcoming that limits my company. And using social media, which is something which surprised me, because when back in 2008, when I was working for the state in the innovation department, I was one of the first people in state government to start using social media to promote my position, not really promote myself, but promote innovation in Georgia. And this is 2008. Everybody was losing their house. My marketing budget got cut by about $75,000, and I was supposed to be this, beacon of light to, all these innovators down, wherever in the state of Georgia. How do you reach them? And so, like, I've been using social media for a long, long time. But then when you had to turn around and use social media to promote myself and my products and my company and say how great I am, that wasn't easy. And then also like the photography, it's like learning. I'm a pretty good photographer right now, especially when it comes to still lifes. I've learned how to adjust the shutter speed and aperture and ISO of my camera. But that was a long time in learning. I've taken a lot of really, really crappy pictures and posted them, over the course of, the past 2 or 3 years, and that was really hard. And then also, coming up with new designs, the reason why my towels have the word y'all in American typewriter font screen printed on them is because I'm not a designer. So I just made words, I just put Southern words on towels with no designs. And part of that was intentional because there's a lot of really bad dish towel art out there. And I was going in the opposite direction. I just wanted clean, classic Southern words on clean, classic Southern designs. And
Understated.
Understated goes with any decor.
Yeah.
Black ink on white towels. You don't have to worry about anything clashing. But that's when I go on the business podcast, not yours, but like a really big, important business podcast. I'm going to say that I would just intentionally went in a different direction than the market, but it was really because I'm just not a very good artist, and all I could screen print legibly and effectively was a word. And, but I have gotten better at some design, and I have gotten better at my photography, but those were real stumbling blocks, especially when you don't really want to promote yourself. And then you've got this crappy picture saying, hey, look how great I am. And, but I have learned a motto, that has helped me over these many, many years. Just do something, even if it's wrong. And that has helped me immensely.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. A great plan never executed never has anything good come of it. And for the record, by the way, I use the word understated because that was the word I used to get me through a lot of art exhibitions back when I was an investment banker in New York. Everybody invited me, and I was expected to attend all these art galleries because that's where you'd find the high ticket clients.
Right.
So I was basically a poser. I even had the all black outfit and everything. But the one thing I knew I could always say, and nobody ever challenged me on, is if I said it was understated, then people always thought that was deep. So I just wanted to give that little hint out there. If you want to be poser like me, use the word understated.
Understated.
What's something that you wish you had done differently when you started the business? If anything.
Well, I wish I'd quit drinking earlier. I wish that I'd had confronted a lot of my doubts earlier and limiting self-beliefs earlier. But, it is what it is. And, one of the things that I do to myself is that, like, when I have a breakthrough on a negative belief, or I learn something and it becomes easy, I have this habit of turning around and viewing the entire scope of my life based on this brand new knowledge and judging it. Like, why didn't you figure this out 10 years ago? Why didn't you figure this out 20 years ago? And so I try not to go back and say, I wish I'd done something differently, because I'm trying to break myself of that habit, because it's like you work and work and work to try to get this new knowledge, and then the new knowledge becomes easy, and then you use that new easy knowledge to look back on your life and judge yourself. And I think that's a bad habit for any entrepreneur, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to constantly be learning new things, and you can't judge yourself for not knowing it back then.
We are talking with Stacy Reece of Down South House and Home of the Decision Vision podcast, and the topic is, should my next job be to work for myself? We're coming up on our allotted time, but there are a couple of questions I want to make sure that I get in. What have you learned about yourself?
I'm awesome, Mike, and success is really, really
I could have told you that. Good grief. Of course, you wouldn't have believed me, but
I'll save it for a real business podcast to say that. So, actually, that is a little bit true. It's like, I've got a lot to offer. And, when you're looking at what are you going to do with yourself if nobody will hire you? And this is cliche, find something you love and do it. But it is kind of like, find a niche. The whole world is splintering apart. And with the pandemic, people are just gravitating to things that they love and provide them comfort. And so if there's something that comforts you, do that and be it, even if it's nerdy, or even if you've been judged by it by other people in the past. Just, what you have to offer, other people need, and I think that that's something I have found that as I've gotten a larger social media audience, I do provide some comfort and happiness through my social media posts and my products. And I want to keep doing that because what I've got in my head is good and right and kind. I'm trying at this age, I'm no longer as snarky as I used to be. And I just want to be a beacon of grace and peace, and if I can do that through my products and my social media, that's what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, there are other options for you. See you later.
Well, that sounds like a great place to be. So where is the business now?
It is growing. It is, I'm not buying a red Corvette with it. But it constantly grows. And I've got a great announcement. My husband, Chuck Reece, who's a wonderful writer, is coming on full time with me to, write the blog post. Because one of the things I can't do is sit down and write an email or a blog post. And those are really important things for cementing your brand. And he's a fantastic writer. And I'm looking for the next year to be, the audience to grow a lot because he's well known as a writer and he's going in a completely different direction. And I think it's going to be a great direction that people need to hear in this time of the pandemic.
Stacey, this has been a great conversation. You and I could easily continue this for the next 6 hours, but our listeners will start to get cauliflower ear. If people want to contact you for more information about this topic, maybe they have a similar story or a similar mindset. You're always so generous with your time, despite your introversion. And someday I think you're going to live in a missile silo. But how can people contact you for more information?
Sure. You can reach me at Stacy, Stacy, at downsouth.house. And that's DOWNSOUTH.house, HOUSE. And you can reach me by email, or you can come to our website, downsouth.house, and all that contact information is there. You can reach out to me anytime.
And this is the first in the Decision Vision program. Somebody came on with a .house domain extension. So we're setting records every day here on this program. You're here to hear it first. That's going to wrap it up for today's program. I'd like to thank Stacy Reece so much for joining us and sharing her expertise with us. We'll be exploring a new topic each week, so please tune in so that when you're faced with your next executive decision, you have clear vision when making it. If you enjoy these podcasts, please consider leaving a review with your favorite podcast aggregator. It helps people find us so that we can help them. Once again, this is Mike Blake. Our sponsor is Brady Ware & Company, and this has been the Decision Vision Podcast.